Okay. Go on my head.
Okay, we ready? Convene the meeting in the Petaluma City Schools Board of Education. If we would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chair, if you would do the honors.
Yes, that should be a cut for this meeting.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if I can remind everybody about cell phones and turning the volume down to 0, mute them, put them on vibrate, turn them off, whatever your preference is. We're going to open up with item E, public hearing. We have a public hearing concerning the public disclosure of the proposed meet and confer agreement between the Petaluma City Elementary and Petaluma Joint Union High School Districts and Petaluma Leadership Association. So I'm going to open up the public hearing. I'm waiting. No one? Comments? Closing the public hearing. Moving on to item F, adoption and approval of the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes. Did anybody have any
No, someone.
adjustments, changes?
Second.
Moved
Oh,
and
it should
seconded.
be.
All those in
Oh, Mike can
favor?
have that second.
All those in favor of the agenda as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? So we will play it as it lies. Item G, approval of the minutes. So we've got two sets of minutes. We've got May 27th and June 10th. I'll figure out who's, is everybody eligible?
Everybody's eligible.
For both?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got a motion to approve both of them, second to approve both of them. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes will be cast in stone as they are presented. Thanks to Suno. Forever and ever. All right, special recognition and reports presentation, item 1. Is there any good music that starts like the budget?
No, I don't know any music.
It's
I
the
really,
flag of Valkyrie.
you know what? That's it, I'm getting it. I'm
2015
getting it for
budget.
my stuff.
Flag of Valkyrie.
To Jaws.
And I'm sort of disappointed it was only 103 pages.
Oh, is that right?
Did you?
Darn, I'll have to do better next time. You know, because you guys must
I was
have,
waiting for you. Scanning through some of the stuff, the juicy innards, you know.
Yeah, and I was doing the same thing. I couldn't tell you how excited I was to go back and see that there was a summary page of 4 pages that you read. Thank you for that.
you're welcome, you're welcome.
All right.
So
Pay attention.
actually what I didn't know at the time I was doing my narrative was that the budget actually was signed off on by the governor at 2 o'clock Friday afternoon. But I hadn't been looking at my email to see that that had happened. So I wrote my narrative with that.
Sort of subject to.
Yeah.
So the one carve out of the one escape clause is now gone, is that what you're saying?
The what?
Well, at the bottom of your summary, it said this
Yes.
is contingent upon the governor signing the budget.
That's exactly right.
So
Anchor talk for we don't just stick to it.
That's right. So,
Carve out.
so I'm just going to go real briefly over the changes from the governor's proposal to what the legislature actually sent to him and what he signed off on. So STRS, I shared with you that the legislature had an alternative proposal and they moved forward with that. Basically, I don't see it changing anything really substantial. It's pretty immaterial, the change that's being proposed. My original estimate doesn't include the impact of subs because subs are eligible for STRS and that, so it's going to be kind of a wash. Deferrals, they won't be eliminated until 2015-16. There'll be a piece that's still hanging out there during 14-15. Reimbursements, they are talking about some mandated cost reimbursement from prior year. It's not a huge amount, but you know, as you know, that's reimbursement for things that we've already done and really a general fund money that should be coming back to us that we can do as we need to. But the recommendation is coming that we should use it for Common Core standards, state standards implementation. So the other thing that is not related to the state side of the budget, but more our side of the budget, is that now that the bonds have passed, we will use the bonds to pay off the certificates of participation that we utilized to complete the Kenilworth Junior High School. So there's just over $6 million. That will be paid off, and the money that we are now using, which is the redevelopment agency money, to pay the COPS annual principal and interest can go towards the deferred maintenance fund and support that. Well, that means that there's about $320,000 that I've added back into the multi-year projection starting in 15-16. So that was good.
Good.
So adult ed, now you know that we have a mandate to have a maintenance of effort for that program for this year and next year. What we really don't know is what happens after that year, and that's $643,000. So depending on how that works out with the junior college and us, that new agreement, we'll see whether or not those dollars either have to still continue to be transferred into the adult ed program or whether or not it will come back into the general fund. So that's a big chunk of money. That's $643,000 a year. The other thing that we're doing, we're in the midst of, is taking back special ed programs that were run by the County Office of Ed. And so in 14-15, we're doing that for the high school district. And then in 15-16, we're doing that for the elementary district. And the elementary district, we're doing it as a consortium with all the feeder districts, the elementary feeder districts. And then at 15-16, the high school district, it will become one large consortium to manage all the special ed programs that the county has run in the past. We have estimates right now about what we think we're going to save, but we'll have to see how the rates change for the programs that we didn't take back from the county and the transportation element. But we're expecting to save, I don't know, probably in the neighborhood of about $300,000. So that's really a plus. New requirements. I shared with you the legislature's proposal that they're going to put, they're going to tell us how much we can hold in our reserve. So there's two new requirements. One is that we, beginning next year with the adoption of the 15-16 budget, we have to hold a public hearing if our reserve exceeds the minimum, which is the reserve for economic uncertainties of 3%. The second thing is, and it's dependent.
Wait, is it, I thought it was, if it was double.
No,
Well, go ahead.
the public hearing is required if we exceed 3%.
Mm-hmm.
In a year where the state makes a contribution to the rainy day fund, if ACA 1 passes in November, it can't exceed 2%. I mean, it can't exceed 6%.
Yeah.
Twice. So differentiate this with the rider that was put on the back of the budget.
I'm going to be going through that in some detail. So the ACA, the Assembly Constitutional Amendment, is going on the ballot in November. We'll see what happens with that.
And what does that say?
I'm
You're
going
getting there.
to go to
Let
it.
me interrupt you one more time.
Yes.
So that's already, the legislature already voted to put that on the ballot? Or
Yes,
so it's not an initiative by the people, it's an initiative
by the Assembly.
by the Senate. So somebody couldn't vote on it themselves. They decided to kick it out to us.
Yes.
They can't change the state constitution.
No, they decided to just maybe make a law instead of deciding to change the constitution.
And what's the legislative rationale for that?
Okay.
Well, the rationale is that since they're establishing, if they establish this rainy day fund, which is kind of where I'm getting into, then the state would be stabilizing K-12 educational funding to a degree that we would not have to rely on having a large enough reserve to stave off any significant state economic uncertainties.
So does this constitutional amendment also require that the rainy day fund not somehow be diverted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Strings?
Yes, it's going to be in a triple lock vault.
Is that the, what was that worse than the lockbox? It's a lockbox.
So here's what's going to happen a year from now, okay? So the minimum reserve, you have to meet that, but if you exceed it, then you have to have a public hearing, okay? The combined assigned and unassigned ending fund balance that is in excess of the minimum has to be disclosed and reasons why you're doing that. So the assigned means something like pretty much what we're doing. We have no committed, which is the next level of reserving a balance in the general fund. Committed means that you guys are taking a board action to commit the funds. Assigned is something that the district administration believes we should hold out. So, for example, we have in there our revolving cash, we have in there our stores inventory as well, and that's basically under the assigned. We have under there, for example, the estimated retiree benefits that we kind of hold in abeyance, showing that we've established that liability and that we've accounted for it for audit purposes. That would be, unless you commit it, then it becomes part of the unassigned and then ultimately part of the reserve that would be over and above the 3%. Yes.
So will an unintended consequence of this be that we may end up having to do the tran notes more often because we don't have as big a reserve and we're going to have a cash flow issue and increase our borrowing costs?
Well, if the deferrals go away, we have done trans in the past, but the other thing that's really come about now is the willingness of the county to open up their checkbook and loan us money, and so then we don't have to go through the cost of issuing a tran. So I wouldn't say that we would do that anyway, given that fact. And the interest rates are so low, we're not making anything on that. On the difference between the loan and what we have in the bank. So probably not. And most of the deferrals, all except $1 billion, is going away within 14-15. So, and unless the state reinstates deferrals, it could have a major impact, because I'm going to show you some slides later that talk about that. So the requirement for 15-16 does not have a cap on reserves yet, but it does require the school boards to publicly discuss and defend why you have something in excess of the reserve. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Assembly Constitutional Amendment 1, which is referred to as the Public School System Stabilization Account. I know. Otherwise known as the Rainy Day Fund. Okay, so it's not likely to apply until after the maintenance factor for all the years prior to 14-15 are paid back. So all the IOUs, all the unpaid COLAs, all the cuts, until that's all restored to us, this can't even happen. So right now, our timeline is 2020-21. Right, so that's when we would, at a minimum, see it. That's the earliest we think we would see it. It's required only if Prop 98 is in a test 1 year, which means that their revenues far exceed. You're better at talking about test 1 than I am.
State revenues exceed the increase in per capita income.
That's right.
And that's happened twice since Prop 98 was approved in the mid-90s.
Right. And so we don't see that this is going to happen anytime soon. And if it does, it usually happens when we are in a boom and then a bust cycle.
So then if we're in a boom for 1 year,
Yeah.
and they have the rainy day fund, and we're capped at 6%, and then the next year's a bust, because it will be,
Right.
then
We can have an exemption. Okay, so that's on my next slide. So also this is not required if a maintenance factor is created. In other words, if they start owing us money, they don't fund the COLA, they start doing cuts, it's not required. Okay? So here's where we get into the exemption. So If you exceed it, you can request an exemption from the county superintendent for up to 2 consecutive years. It requires a statement to substantiate the need and identify the amount, and then talk about why there's no other alternatives but to hold this in reserve in the general fund. So sometimes like Fund 40, we don't have a Fund 17, but they would look at, oh, well, you have money sitting in here, you could use that. Well, you would have to go through that justification and document why you don't have any other choices. So in order for this to kick in, so suppose 2 years in a row we're in a boom cycle. We've got some extraordinary thing happening. And so we could apply for 2 years for the exemption, and it wouldn't be until the 3rd year, if we were continued in that boom cycle, that we would apply for the exemption, and the county would say, now you've already got your 2 consecutive years, so it's not going to happen. Well, Steve has just shared that it's happened twice in I don't know how many years.
Almost 20.
Yeah, okay. I don't think he's that likely to see that happen anytime soon. So this is when the maximum 6% would happen. So I've done a little chart here showing what our historic amounts. Now 0607 was prior to when we started seeing cuts and deferrals, okay? So even at that time, we were just under 10%, and you can see we've just kind of hovered there. In 09-10, in this range here, this is when we were completely cash poor. We had 20% of our ending fund balance as a cash balance. And remember back here, it was 81% of our general fund balance. So we didn't have cash issues. We had to have this large of a reserve because our multi-year projections were such that, oh my gosh, if we didn't have that kind of reserve, we would have been in serious trouble for not making cuts ahead of the curve. Right now, in 12-13, we were just over 10.5%, and for 13-14, we're estimated at 9.13%.
Which is the lowest
Yes.
in a long time.
Yep. And just so you know, the average unified district, which if we weren't 2 separate districts, we would be considered a unified district, is about 14%. So we're actually, even in our toughest years, we've never exceeded that average. So I just wanted to give you some historical or hysterical perspective on that. So one other thing that I wanted to share with you and that I forgot to put into this slide is the status of negotiations. Tonight, obviously, you are going to be looking at our AB 1200 for the Petaluma Leadership Association. In other words, classified and certificated management that had come to agreement with the district for salary increase. And that is 2.5% and a one-time bonus in lieu of increasing the health benefits cap of $500 per full-time equivalent employee. So what this budget reflects, not in this year and in ongoing years, is we have built in a 2.5% increase for all employees and the same $500 one-time. So that one-time benefit only exists in this year. The cap remains the same in these out years, so, and that cost is about $350,000 in 14-15 for that one-time bonus for all employees based on FTE. Okay. So there's one other thing I want to mention about 13-14. We have had, I wouldn't say it's extraordinary, but it is unusual that we have really high legal costs this year. And we also have some insurance claims, largely due to the Casa Grande power outage and replacing those things. That claim with PG&E is still pending. We did get some reimbursement from that, but it was a substantial hit, and the replacement of the equipment and the like was large. So between those two things, I'm not counting on necessarily seeing huge increases to our ending fund balance. But again, that's all dependent on, you know, the sites and departments, whether or not they fully expend their unrestricted resources. There is no other increase for salary and benefits in these years. And as you can see, we're just above a break-even point as far as our out years. So when you look at this, if this right now is 9.13%, you can see we're heading down. It's probably close to 7% in that range.
So Midge, I'm sorry, 1415 includes across the board 2.5% plus 500 plus whatever, 15, 16, 16, 17. Would be the same flat number, would be the same salary benefit number of 1450.
Yes. And this year, we take out the one-time bonus. That's eliminated from here. Okay. All right. So you can see that we're still meeting our 3% reserve, and then our unappropriated reserves are going down because we have significant deficit spending to basically provide the employees with that increase at this time.
The
Okay?
other thing that's built into 1415 is some class size reduction.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We have about just under 10 full-time equivalent teachers added back into this budget. Thank you for reminding me.
What about the STRS?
STRS, yes, all the STRS and PERS increases are reflected in these amounts as well. Any other questions on this? I think that's it. So,
I wanted to make a comment about the reserves, for those watching at home, that one of the reasons we have reserves is so that we didn't have to make the severe cuts to staffing levels during the time when the state was cutting what they were sending to us. So we spent more than we received because we had reserves to pay for it. And to have the state take away that flexibility is something that I have a hard time with, because locally with our community and all of our staff, we've been able to ride this, that's how 7 years of cuts,
Yes.
with the least impact on kids and staffing as we can possibly make. So I just want to say that I hope to have that flexibility going forward.
Comments or questions?
the only thing the governor said with regard to your concerns, because there were some large organizations sharing that, and he said your concerns have been noted. So he did not address it any further than that. So,
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next presentation, but before we do that, I just want to remind anybody that's here who would like to make public comment. The public comment card's in the back. That's going to be after this presentation, so if you're planning on making a public comment, just start filling out the form, that'd be great. After that, I will now pass it over to Jim.
Uh-oh, we had it ready to go and now it's gone. Hold on.
oh, take off the names.
No, it's fine, it's just
Just
not,
leave it off.
this is not up yet. There we go.
Here we go.
Right. So we're signed in and now it's signed out again. But that's not possible. Great. Don't you like this? Want me to do it for you? No.
She's trying to go too fast.
Yes.
Is it all caps?
Is your name spelled right? That's what I'm checking.
Everything's good about focus. Cap lock's not on. There you go.
Yay, first hurdle.
Short-term memory.
Don't go there. Don't go there. Okay. I thought that we would give you a quick overview of what's going on in science these days with our next generation science standards and the secondary science program. So this is just a real quick overview of where we're at and where we're going. In the next generation science standards, there is a very big shift from learning about science to doing science. And you can see the emphasis that are within all of these different shifts. They are emphasizing the interconnectedness of the different science disciplines. So looking at a topic and looking at it across life, physical, earth science. So waves, for example, and looking at the motion, looking at the energy, looking at all of how it affects the moon and earth science and that kind of thing. So looking across instead of looking at science as individual subject areas. Okay? All students, all standards. That's kind of different because right now a lot of our kids don't take chemistry necessarily. A lot of our kids don't take physics. And this is a change because they expect all students to have access and to learn all the standards. Engineering for all. So not only learning about our different science concepts, but also learning about how to build and create systems. Looking at all the scientific and engineering practices. And we're not going to go through these, but there are some practices that you've seen a lot in the Common Core, like asking questions and in-depth academic discussion, that kind of thing. Runs right through all of this also. And then cross-cutting concepts, and that's that interconnectedness once again, looking at interconnectedness. We're starting at 6th, 7th, 8th. There is another shift. You notice that 6th grade is with 7th and 8th, instead of 6th grade being with K-5. So that is another very large shift here for us, especially with our junior highs. And a challenge that we're addressing by bringing our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers together. So this is the current model. The kids that pretty much in 6th grade are taking earth science. In 7th grade it's life science, and 8th grade it's physical science. Pretty much looking like that. In the integrated model, and our teachers have already committed, our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers have committed to an integrated model. You can see how that shifts. So if we look back at this, see cells and organisms in 7th grade, now it's in 6th. Ecosystems in 7th grade, and you can see that they kind of now go across. They're still there in 7th, but you're talking about weather and climate, and you're talking about evolution and that kind of thing in 8th. So you're seeing kind of a shift in what's being taught where, and how the standards kind of go across all of the different grade levels, so that the concepts build actually from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. The emphases are in the bottom there: systems and patterns, and structure and function in 6th grade, energy and matter, cause and effect in 7th grade, and then stability and change, and scale is in 8th grade. So here's our timeline. The decision was made in April, last April 2014, to go to an integrated 6th through 8th model. Teachers felt strongly that the integrated model would better serve students, and also that the instructional resources are going to be more aligned with the integrated model rather than the old model. So it just makes sense to go forward with this model. In 14-15, we're going to create a 6-12 science committee who will be working on helping us design and deploy the different science curriculums. We'll design and revise the 6th and 7th grade programs next year, and we'll make a decision about what's going to happen in 9 and 12, and we'll look at that in just a second. We'll deploy in 15-16, 6th and 7th grade, even though 6th is going to try a little bit, 7th is going to try a little bit. They're going to Gonna start making the shifts in 14-15. We're really gonna deploy in 15-16. And then we'll deploy, do the design and revise for 8th grade in 15-16 and deploy in 16-17. And start working on 9-12. So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the 6th graders this year and we're gonna follow them up with the new curriculum as they move through the school district. And then in 16-17, we'll be looking at deploying 9-12 science. High school options, there are 3 different models that we can choose from. And you can actually intertwine these models also if that's something that teachers feel strongly about. There's a conceptual progressions model, and that's more of the integrated model, like we're talking about for 6, 7, and 8. There's the science domains, and you can see that it's physical, life, and earth science, and then you take the engineering and weave that throughout. And then modified science domains, that's like we do right now with the biology, chemistry, physics, but then earth and science gets intertwined throughout all of them. Okay? We'll bring the committee together starting in September probably, and they'll make the decisions about this kind of stuff over the course of next year. Mary?
Do you have any feedback from UCCSU regarding, an integrated model? You had the issue with mathematics and the coursework that's acceptable.
They are very, UCCSU and the A through G requirements are very supportive of the integrated model. They're actually supportive of any of the models that we choose, but they're very supportive of the models. One of the questions that we'll be talking about is teacher credentialing, because that's a question that's going to come up. Our teachers are trained for biology or life science, physical science, or so we're going to have to professional development. You'll see the big exclamation points after that is going to be very, very important, because we're going to be asking people who have really delved in and developed an expertise around one domain, and we may be asking them to teach across domains. There are different ways that we might be able to address that, but that's something that we really have to think about.
Right.
Okay? The state has already said that we will need, that they're going to accept any of the credentials for any of the courses.
Okay.
So, decisions coming up. We need to get the curriculum maps ready to go for 6 through 8. And those are kind of our roadmaps for where we're going with the kids each year. We need to decide about the model or models that might be used at 9-12. We need to talk about the course sequences at 9-12. We got to get the curriculum maps going for 9-12. We're going to need to identify instructional resources, and note that doesn't say materials, and it doesn't say textbooks. And then professional development, big professional development. Yeah, Mary.
Okay, so we're looking at this, the incoming 6th graders and following them. How does that map to our integrated map?
And that is the other thing that I did not put on this decisions to be made list, because that is something that we have to consider. Because the math that is needed for physics and the math that's needed for chemistry needs to match
Right.
with the science courses. So that's something that we're going to have to consider and think about very carefully to make sure that we're in sync all the way across the board for the kids.
Right, but I that's what I was asking, as far as I know we're starting when and what grade?
15, 16,
15,
with
16,
math 1.
With math 1 in 7th grade.
In 8th, in 9th.
Ninth. So, but it's starting before that, isn't that, with the 7th graders?
This
This
year for
coming
the
year.
incoming 7th graders.
The incoming 7th graders begin the Common Core
Right.
7th grade math.
Right.
Next year they'll go to 8th grade math. They'll be the first ones who will have math 1 available.
So they're a year ahead of the
So they'll be a year ahead.
6th graders, so,
Yeah.
okay, so math.
So they'll be okay
Right.
going through.
Right.
And then the 6th graders is where we may have to make other adjustments in terms of math and science so that the courses match.
Right.
How's it going to play out with all the feeder districts?
That is another good question. We are going to be talking with all the feeder districts, and we're going, especially because of the sixth grade thing, we're going to be inviting them to come to the meetings as we're planning. And hopefully they're going to want to participate. Pretty sure they will. Want to participate alongside with us so that we're all on the same page for the kids when they get to 7th grade.
That's gonna be pretty dramatic.
It's gonna be, yeah,
It's already dramatic enough, honestly, trying to get everybody level.
we are gonna try to level the playing field for 6th grade and on.
That is an enormous priority.
Yes, it is.
And same thing with that.
Yeah. The same thing in math. So the shift in Common Core from K5, 6, 8, 9, 12, with the grade span shifting in those configurations and away from our previous configurations is causing a little bit of challenge for us. And thinking about how are we going to make sure that we're all working together, all of the 6th grades are working together to prepare the kids no matter where they end up going to school. Because it doesn't matter where they go to school at 7th grade, they're going to need to be ready to rise to the level of rigor that they're going to be asked.
It's almost like there needs to be a 6th grade consortium.
Right. Remind me how many, and I don't mean to put you on the spot for exact numbers, but give me an idea. Feeder districts going into Petaluma Junior, feeder districts going into.
We have, 3 going into Kenilworth. Most of the kids, well, remember, it's Old Adobe and WA,
And a little bit of Petaluma City Schools.
and a little bit of Petaluma City.
What about,
Cinnabar,
Dunham,
Dunham, Two Rock, Wilmar, Liberty are all Petaluma Junior feeders.
plus the little one runner or something?
Plus the-
Union.
plus the-
Union, yeah.
Yeah.
They all go to Petaluma Junior. So there are more kids, more districts feeding into Petaluma Junior, but there are more students
Yes.
going into Kenilworth.
Yes.
So it's going to be a challenge, but it's something that we're willing to take on, and we're hoping to.
Articulation's going to be a big issue.
Well, and, I mean, to Mary's point, I think I'm piggybacking on your point, but I'm not positive, tell me if I'm not, but, I mean, is there an opportunity to formally attempt some kind of a feeder district, besides just inviting people to come, or hope that they come? I mean, can we coerce them? to
I
come?
am going,
Yeah, I don't know
I
what
have
exactly,
put
but-
upon our bosses, one of the things that I've asked Steve to do is to talk to the South County Supes, because he meets regularly with the South County superintendents, that we get this onto their agenda and start talking about it so that we can make some decisions as we go ahead. For the education of the kids, this is all about
No, I know.
students.
Right.
And on the math piece especially, you know, that building block thing is real fragile, and the second you miss a step,
Yeah.
you start at the bottom again. It's-
That's right. That's why, you remember when we were talking about the math and we were talking about the different acceleration points? That's one of the reasons we're putting the different acceleration points in. is so that no matter when a child comes into the system, they have the opportunity.
But then the flaw kind of in that, I mean, that's a fix, but sort of the underlying consistent flaw though is that you have to properly identify those kids coming in to figure out where they belong.
Right.
And we go through weeks and maybe even a month of, oh, really, you're way over your head, we need to move you back. And
Right.
so,
The junior highs are testing in math.
We use,
all
yeah,
incoming sixth graders.
all
second
incoming
graders.
6th graders take the MDTP, which is out of the UC system. It's actually an algebra test out of the UC system. And a lot of districts in California use it as a placement test. So we'll be continuing that and then also looking to see if we do need some other resources around assessment to better identify kids.
but will that test then match the new math curriculum of math one and math? Or are we gonna have to go look at that test and sort of jimmy jack that around
It's a good question. We're not sure yet. Because the MDTP is basically an algebra test.
So having been on the board of one of the feeder districts 10 plus years ago, It's, I understand the perspective of the community and they're focused on their kids. And I think that it would be really helpful if we could figure out a way to communicate as a board or, through Steve, that we care about their kids now too, because they're our kids. And if there's a way to, I don't know if it's time for another South County trustee, it's been a long time, I don't know that you guys ever did one of those dinners.
Oh, I think the very first year.
Washington.
Yeah.
The Washington House.
Which was the last one, right?
There was one at Beyond
I'm
Glory.
always up for going to the Washington.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do that, we could put that together and have this be the program.
Have a program.
Integration of,
But maybe when we get a little bit
Sense.
of
So, yeah,
more
our
information.
desire is really to that exact message, Mary, is that all the kids in Petaluma are our kids.
Yeah.
And they may be in one district, they may be in another district, but they're all going to end up in high school together.
Right, in junior high.
And junior high and
Most
high
of them,
school
yeah.
together. And we really want to make sure that everybody is prepared and comes out of high school, college and career ready, as
Right.
they're saying.
but you would think those boards and their superintendents would be asking us, like,
Right. What can-
okay, where do we have to have these kids? Because,
Right.
I mean, they owe it to those kids to get them ready for the
So
next
that
level.
they're,
But it's not, even currently, it's not happening.
No,
Well, there's a
no.
fierce
some-
independence.
Yeah.
That's the
Oh,
You can still be fierce
That's
independent,
a
but
polite way
you-
of saying that's a fierce.
That's a
independence.
how about
very,
being fiercely
very,
realistic? And,
right.
the
reality
reality is great, but the reality's there.
okay,
Thank
Hey,
you.
thanks.
thanks.
Jay.
You got a little bit on your plate.
Yeah, just a little bit.
You're excused, you can go back to the back.
Forget dinner.
We should be here till like 8.
Yeah, at least.
Actually, I like these because I get a lot done.
Yeah.
All right, hey, normally we would break here, but
Let's
we
move
don't
on.
have any children to excuse to go do homework.
Homework,
so-
yes.
So
Oh,
let's
yeah.
keep moving on. I did make an announcement earlier about comments from the public, if anybody had a card, and I saw a concerned citizen get up and get a card. So please, concerned citizen, come forward.
Indeed, I am a concerned citizen. Here you go.
Throw that down to Donna, thank you.
That's all right.
Introduce yourself, please.
Oh, my name is Connie Williams. I'm currently the teacher librarian at Petaluma High School and a concerned citizen. I want to take just 1 minute for two things. The first one is to, after listening to James talk about the integrated curriculum in both math and in science, and in the way that Common Core is working, I just want to keep putting forward in front of you that when you create these integrated programs where kids are actually doing things, that it means that they're actively researching and that they're actively creating. And if we really want them to use their 21st century skills, they need 21st century teaching. I'd like you to consider that the elementary libraries can be the central resource for the elementary learning, and that resources that are held in a library are available to all students as opposed to when they're in individual classrooms. So all kids have access to all the materials when they have access to their libraries. And also please consider who can help teach that professional development, things like questioning, web evaluation, using 21st century tools and inquiry designed lessons, that a teacher librarian in the elementary level would be a really good choice. So I put that out to you as many times as I possibly can, and to the universe and to the community. It's my passion there. But, and then the other aside was, I would like to invite you, I don't know if you saw the letter Karen Tamborski wrote to the Press Democrat. Her class, a special day class, did a project where they used our Guide to Buy Sale program. You take your cell phone into that's currently at the Petaluma Museum, and their projects are on display. You dial a phone number, and when you pick up the phone, you first hear my cheery voice telling you that it's a Petaluma High School Library project, but then you dial in the number of the artifact that you're looking at, and the student tells you what they did. And this is a fabulous project. It's not going to be there for too much longer, so take the time to go see it. I'm not sure, a couple of weeks, I hope, at least that, I don't know for sure, but a couple of friends and I went down, and we ended up just walking around the whole thing. It was just really awesome to go see what they were doing with their fabulous projects. So do take a moment, don't forget your phone.
This is at the library?
No, it's at the
Petaluma
Petaluma Museum.
Okay, so
Yeah.
downtown.
The old library.
What is that?
Yeah,
C and-
their hours are Tuesday
Kentucky and
through
C.
Saturday.
B?
Sunday, Tuesday through
B,
Sunday.
B,
B.
or B.
Kentucky and B.
Across from Acre Coffee. down there.
The old
Yeah.
Carnegie,
Yeah, and it's just right there when you walk in. It's pretty awesome.
Look at you being able to spin it back to a library.
You
Back to the
know,
Carnegie Library, good job.
absolutely. I can always do that.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, do I have any other comments from the public? Seeing no one rush to the podium, I'm going to close public comment. We're going to go to report on activities and correspondence of school board members, and I would normally pass around a sheet. And failing to do so, I will.
All of our graduations were before the last meeting, yes.
I had the opportunity to meet with the superintendent for a lovely lunch. That would be my activity.
Did you buy for a change?
I did. I did, and not only did I do that, I didn't expense it to my office.
Nice. Well,
So, like I can't lie to you. All right, so we're going to move on to agenda of, approval of the consent agenda by consolidated motion. So we've got the consent items.
So moved. I didn't see anything I wanted to pull.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, so that's going to go 4-0. Moving on to a very joyous time here, the employment report. Who is going to present?
Jane is going to introduce the newest member of the district's management team.
Subject to a vote.
Oh.
These guys, you gotta stay on top of them, they're so presumptive, they just think.
I know. So I am very pleased. Where'd she go? There she is. I am very pleased to introduce Mila Kell as our new Director of Curriculum and Instruction. You guys have had the pleasure of interviewing Mila, so I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about her. As you know, she has just moved from Chicago and Chicago Public Schools. She was up until 3 o'clock this morning unpacking.
Oh, just moved.
She
I'm
just
in the process of.
They just arrived and found a place in Roden Park, so they are now new locals. She has had 32 years of experience. She has worked in both here in the United States and in Europe. She has taught in every single grade level except 8th grade. We'll see if we can fix that over the course of the next year. She has focused very focused and developed a great expertise in math, in science. She might be leading that new science committee. Music, literacy, and in second language acquisition. And she is also a very talented professional developer and has worked with professional development in adults at every single level, including teachers and administrators. So I am very pleased to introduce Mila Kell and really looking forward to having her join the Ed Services team.
Thank you, Jane.
I'm going to be very brief, and if it's not very coherent, it's because I was up until 3 in the morning.
As Jane is close.
I'm very excited to join the district. I'm feeling very fortunate. From what I've glimpsed so far, the team that I'm joining is a very vibrant and progressive team, very supportive. So I'm excited about that. To become a part of such a team is always an accomplishment already in itself. I'm also very happy to join the Petaluma community. Just observing from afar your issues with bonds and the fact that they weren't approved, that's a really good vote of confidence. And of course, it inspires everybody to work just harder for our kids, because you guys put your money where your mouth is. And you support education of your students, so we only will take it from there. And I'm very excited to join the team that will be taking it from there. And I hope and I'm sure that I will contribute to this team and help it enrich the good work that is already going on here. And finally, I know that these are very exciting and challenging times for everybody. Everybody in the country is, of course, trying to implement common core state standards and changes, for talking about new generation science standards. It's a difficult time. It is a challenging time, but I think it's a good thing because it's going to benefit our kids. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to join the team at that time. And so I'm really, really, really thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So let's make it official by accept the motion.
So moved.
Okay, any discussion?
No, we're just happy to have you.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Okay,
Very excited.
you're in.
It's official.
Congratulations. We're really happy to have you. And I've been accused of saying this before, but your interview was one of my favorite.
Oh, thank you.
It really was. You could just really tell you are excited to do what you do, and I find that really refreshing. And so, on behalf of the board, we're just really glad you're here.
Thank you. I will try not to disappoint you. No pressure at all.
So when Jane goes back to finish up until 8 o'clock, you're on the clock.
No, she gets to go home and go to sleep, she's gonna have some sleep.
Fair enough.
You'll disappoint us if you don't go home and get some sleep.
And there's lots of people who can give you, advice on restaurants and other things in the area, so you get to know the community.
Please just ask.
I will take you up on it, believe me.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so moving on. Item 2, the superintendent contract addendum. Am I looking to Midge for that, Steve?
I'll just do motion and second.
We'll go motion
Sure.
in a second,
Sure.
and then let's go, are we going to Midge? Let's go to Midge. No?
I have a
Go back to
motion.
Steve?
We have to have a second, okay.
Okay, let's go.
So in the superintendent's contract, later in the agenda, you're being asked to approve the certificated salary schedule and classified salary schedule and the AB 1200. The superintendent's contract is tied to the increases provided to the management team. So we're asking for the same increases that are proposed, and we're incorporating the budget for all employees to be incorporated into the superintendent's contract.
Okay. Anybody have any comment or discussion about that?
My only question was the snapshot taken, it was for the 13-14?
13-14, correct. Yeah,
So
we
that
do
it's
that
been
every
adjusted and
May
then,
10th
okay,
to
Okay.
bring it up to where districts were in 13-14.
okay, great, that was my only question.
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent's contract is done. Moving on to, Lori, I forgot my little pointer thing that you gave me. So I'm going back to the fat finger problem now, so it'll work with me.
Right as it came up.
But I know exactly where it is, so I will bring it next time for sure. Okay. We're going to move on to item 7, declaration of need for fully qualified educators in the Petaluma Joint Union High School District for 2014-2015, and this is revised. Welcome to motion.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, so we have a teacher at Petaluma High School who's in this ag department who does not have the bilingual certification, but she's currently in a program where that certification is embedded. So for her to continue her employment into next year, she works at getting her EL embedded credential. We're asking for the board to take action on this motion.
Okay. And just as a comment, I know that's been a difficult position to fill a highly qualified person in, so
Right.
I certainly went for that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0 on that one. All right, let's go to the 2014-2015 Local Control and Accountability Plan LCAP Adoption Authorization.
So moved.
Second.
Jane's been hard at work for months and months on this.
You can tell because it was in very small font.
Yes, that's on purpose, so you didn't know. The LCAP, we had a great process. We started last October and worked with the community, a large group of people, probably 30, 35 people on the committee, and really delved into looking where we are and where holes we needed to fill, and had a wonderful participatory process, and have resulted in an LCAP that will drive us forward for the next 3 years. One of the reminders about the LCAP is that it's one of those living documents and that it will change. There's no question about it. As funding fluctuates and that kind of thing, there will be changes based on funding. There'll be changes based on data reviews and looking at where we are now and where we're going in the future. But we were able to capture pretty well in one document where we will be, where we hope to be 3 years from now.
And the committee's gonna meet again next year?
Yes, so the committee will continue. Right now, we have 3 meetings set up for them, October, February, and April, I think it is, to kind of do check-in points about where we're at, how we are progressing, what kind of hurdles we're finding, and what kind of adjustments need to be made.
Okay.
And it's something will be approved every year?
Yes.
And you know, I probably should make comment that any of these items that we're discussing now, if anybody in the public would like to make comment about that, you certainly have an opportunity. If you just raise your hand, then I can call on you for that. So, my other question would be, other than the 30 members of the committee, did we get much other outside community input?
We had one meeting, we had a community meeting, and we had...
We had 2. We had the DLAC.
And the DLAC, that's right, we had 2. So we're required to have 2 community meetings. So we had one open community meeting, and we had a lot of teachers came to that, which was good. And then we had the DLAC meeting, and that meeting was held all in Spanish, so that we could really get in there and explain in their primary language what we were talking about. We had members of the Spanish-speaking community on the big committee also, and provided translations at all the meetings so that they were thoroughly involved. So we also did, we took all of the comments that came from any of the meetings, typed them all up, answered them all, and posted them all on the web. The LCAP has been on the web since March.
With revisions.
As the revisions were made, we were revising and reposting. So we've had a pretty good process. All of the districts around, when I talk to people who have been doing the LCAPs in other districts, there has not been a groundswell of questions.
I kind of thought that would happen.
Yeah.
I thought so too. I thought we'd have more.
And I guess I was thinking more in terms of, I know we did the community meetings, but I mean, outside of that, the random emails, the stop you on the street, somebody coming in to say, hey, by the way, I can make a meeting, but, not really?
No, not so much. But remember, it's the first year.
Yeah.
And I think that as people get used to it, they'll probably, as people get used to the process.
But that can kind of go both ways too. I mean,
Could be the opposite.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm hoping that as people get used to the process, we'll get more questions, because it can only be good.
yeah, there's no downside to that.
So where from what resources did you develop this template?
The template that comes directly from the California Department of Education, and we were not allowed to modify it.
Yeah, that's not
Surprise,
modified.
surprise, so that's real local.
Starts with local control. Here's the
I
template.
actually tried to modify
It's
it.
gonna be
at
local
one
control, and
point.
here's the template you're
Was
gonna
that
use
a
to.
rhetorical question?
Yeah, kind of. And the second is, how much employee time or hours, I guess I'll express it in, do you anticipate it'll take to, on an annual basis, respond to the local template?
Well, this year it was enormous.
Yeah, the first year,
Yeah.
for
Could you
not just
estimate?
concerns from school
Oh my
districts.
God.
100 hours.
I mean, we're talking
Easily
about
100 hours.
100 hours,
Probably more than
Oh,
that.
Or,
Yeah.
100
This
hours.
year.
that not
It was,
counting
more than 100 hours when we
It
started
had to be,
incorporating
yeah.
the
The
committee
meetings,
meetings
oh
and the
my
number of
gosh.
people in committee meetings,
And all the,
and like, it was several hundred hours.
yeah.
So several hundred hours.
right.
Yeah, easily.
And we have,
It's-
what, Troy, correct me if I'm wrong, but 160 working hours in an 8 to 5 day?
Is it-
Typically. So we're talking that this takes months.
It was probably
hours.
a solid, if you took all the time and put it together, it was probably at least a solid month.
but the learning curve is huge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
And
and
we're
so-
fishing next
So
to-
moving it forward. a
Right,
little
so
more.
moving it
Moving forward should be just
Because-
updating, more familiarity with the template, and also hopefully some improvements to the template by the state. would be
But it's
nice.
not, this template's not gonna change,
No.
I mean, they'll use the same template
Right.
every year.
And tell me the final process, so this is a final draft, so we submit this to whom for
This
approval?
this now goes to SCO.
Okay,
SCO can approve or reject.
okay,
If they reject, they give us feedback about why they're rejecting, and then we go back into a revision process at that time.
There's only 3 areas that they can reject, and the state's established in 3 areas. So the first one, of course, is failure to use the template.
Right.
yeah. So keep going,
So
so
locally.
let's say SCO accepts, then what?
SCO accepts, and then we move forward.
And then that's when we put in our request for reimbursement from the state for the hundreds of hours?
Right. Good luck with that.
Darn it.
We also did LCAPs. We don't have to approve them, we're just accepting them for all of the charters. So Live Oak, they did their own, but we also did one for Pengrove, one for Mary Collins, one for the 6th grade academy, and we're still working on the one for Gateway to
So
College.
every district have provided these this year.
And every charter school.
And every charter,
Every
so
charter
like
school.
Old Adobe has how many charters now?
They have 4 of their 5 schools are charters, so they have to have a district and 4 charter schools. We have 4 charter schools and districts, so we had to do 5
Well, I'm
ourselves.
just thinking like poor Eric Hoppus out of Wilson had to, I mean, he doesn't have the vast resources James, he would have.
Right,
Which
no,
is
poor Eric. had-
Dramatic overhead
Yeah.
that he carried.
He had to do it himself.
SCO hired a new position, one of our former administrators, Tony Bill,
Oh.
as their LCOP.
Oh,
The person
We're from the East Coast.
who we're submitting these to and has to go through and approve them.
Yeah.
But she was also asking for them to be submitted in advance so she could review them and give us
Feedback.
feedback.
Right.
Any other discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The LCAP, the inaugural LCAP. Passes.
Thank you.
All right, resolution, item 9, resolution 13-1434, the resolution of Petaluma City Elementary and Joint Union School Districts proclaiming September as Attendance Awareness Month.
So
Who writes this up?
Because otherwise you're not aware, right? of
Yeah.
attendance? I'm sorry.
I need a second. Two controversy on this one.
So I'll
Does
speak
anybody
to
want to
this.
speak to it?
So the state has asked that this be, or September be designated Attendance Awareness Month. One of the big issues is attendance. We're fortunate in this district that we have a very high attendance percentage, well over 95%. 95% is considered good. And but we still agree that there should be an emphasis on attendance. We start with that at the beginning of the year. So our recommendation is to agree with the county superintendent's proposal that all districts take action proclaiming September as Attendance Awareness Month.
Our attendance rate hovers around between 96 and 97%.
Yeah,
which is
Pretty
huge.
darn good.
So apparently we're pretty aware.
Even our families are aware.
Like going to school is a good thing.
And obviously attendance is hugely important
And the people of Petaluma get that.
besides
because we're
getting paid for
97%.
people being here, it's probably a predictor of success in school actually attending. I just always get a kick out of the fact that we need to proclaim this to be the month of.
Which is actually probably one of the better attended months because
It's
it's a new year. But
Like February or something might be.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
start drying
By
out
the time,
after
yeah.
For
Christmas.
whatever it is that we need to do in September to support properly the Attendance Awareness Month, just make sure that you send us an email to let us know. There, so. All those in favor
Aye.
of September being Attendance Awareness Month?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't need to make light of that, I find those are just kind of silly. All right. Okay, I'm scrolling down here to purchase orders, item 9 under business services.
So
Second?
And do I have anybody who needs to bow out of this one for conflicts of interest?
No, not this time.
Okay, so any questions? All those in favor of purchase orders as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? And item 10, list of expenditures.
moved.
Sure.
So I'm sorry, second?
And do I have anybody who needs to bow out of the list of expenditures for conflicts of interest?
No.
No, I do not. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0 as well. Okay, item 11, disclosure of the meet and confer agreement authorization for the proposed disclosure of the meet and confer agreement between Petaluma City Elementary and Petaluma Joint Union High School Districts and the Petaluma Leadership Association.
So moved. Second.
Okay, so as shared earlier under the budget, a 2.5% salary increase was agreed to with the leadership group, and as well as the $500 one-time stipend for 14-15 only.
Let me ask a question.
Please.
Yes.
How do we, when we begin negotiating with our different groups, how does that go? Is it all done in the same month, week, day, year? I mean, who do we do first? Do we go to one group and say we're starting now? Do we start with everyone?
Well, in their contracts, we have a start date as to when negotiations are supposed to start for that year. And so we typically start around the first of the calendar year, hoping to settle for the next year before June 30th. We have not reached that goal with CSEA or Federation at this time.
So how people, how these things come to a close, it depends on how long it takes to negotiate with them. So if one group negotiates quicker, they're done and we can ratify that contract, and this one takes a little longer, so we're done, we can ratify them, and then, is that correct?
Yes.
There's not like an order where we go down the
No.
chain, we start with you, and then we get to you, and then we get to...
Often management is last, and management's not negotiated. Management is meet and confer, which they're not unionized. So we meet and discuss parameters and finally reach an agreement.
Thank you.
How many employees are we talking about?
Approximately 40 in the management team.
Yes.
Sorry.
So we're 5% of the way.
A little less than 5%.
Okay, hey,
Okay.
it's a step. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I just lost my place again. Item 12, thank you. Agreement ratification with Joe Lenarde Electric Inc. to investigate and validate all existing devices and wiring in the fire alarm system in buildings at Casa Grande High School as shown on Summit Engineering drawings dated May 19th, 2014. That sounds very specific and formal.
So moved.
Second.
So we're talking about,
Yes, we're talking about the fire alarm system at Casa Grande that we have shared with you. We've been having problems with. We have detected, we believe that there's intermittent wire issues, and it's really time consuming to go through and identify what has failed. So that's part of what we have to go through to get the fire alarm system back up and running.
you know, I kind of forget Casa Grande. I always think of it as the, quote, new high school, but it's 40?
Yeah,
Built in 71, the first graduating class in 75, 74, 75.
yeah, I think it started on line 70, no, it started on line Troy's 72, 73. It was my
Yeah.
senior year, that was their first matriculation.
It's about as long as I've been alive.
40 years. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Okay.
Then it's really young, it's a really young school.
Yeah.
Well, no, I agree with Troy, you think it's the new school, but
But
compared to Petaluma it is, but it's newer, but it's 40 years old.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And looks like a similar item 13, ratification with our good friends at Lunardi Electric Incorporated to install devices, raceways, and wiring for the new fire alarm system at Casa Grande. Why are we getting?
Yeah, why
Let's
is
take a.
Oh.
Let's take
Because
a-
one was for,
so moved.
Second.
Why are we
Yeah,
getting
why is
two
it have
just
to be
out of
broken up
school?
in-
Why is it they're not part of it?
One's an investigation and one's a doing?
one's work.
Once the actual install of the new parts and whatnot that need to be installed to get it up and running. Some are just the pull stations, just bringing certain things up to code,
So while we're fixing it, we're kind of upgrading it a little bit at the same time.
just a little bit.
Are we hoping that, are we expecting that it's going to be done by the beginning of school?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What was that, man? What was the cost of that?
That
That
is
was
approximately
$130,000.
$130,000 to do the install and all the wiring that's needed.
Now, we previously approved on an emergency basis, is this tied to that, or is it the same company?
Yes, it is. No, it's not the same company.
Good.
We hired the electrical engineer to draw up the plans
Okay,
to get this far.
okay.
And so
And
they're
this-
working from that document.
And this was a big job, Steve?
This was a major job, yes.
So, no, I'm just want to
No,
make sure
wait.
it wasn't,
Did it?
I said it was
It
a
was
big
not-
job, not a
not
mid
big.
job.
No,
It's
this
an
is,
emergency.
this is an emergency, so we went out.
Yeah, we did
So we
not.
went out and got proposals from people because we didn't have time to do the formal bid process,
Okay.
award the bid and that. So that's what the resolution avoided.
So
And
this,
now we're working with the electrician that came in and provided us with the best proposal and has the manpower to take this project on.
We
So-
worked with Lenardi before?
Yes,
Okay, I thought so, I recognized the name.
yes.
is it fair to say that this has been bid, it's just not been formally bid?
It's not through a formal bid process, yes,
Okay.
it's with
All right.
local,
Right.
Well, that's, this doesn't have to go back to SCO, right?
correct, it does
Is it
not.
already? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, amended memorandum of understanding and authorization with the South Sonoma County Consortium for Special Ed Services.
Second.
This is a big one.
Yeah.
Right, this is all of our elementary feeder districts working with Petaluma City Schools. We work together to join forces to bring the students back from SCO programs that were either located at SCO or in other districts throughout the county to be more local, being served here in Petaluma as much as possible. So we collectively expect to, since some districts only have one or two, it made sense for us to become a consortium so that we had economies of scale and then house the students here. So we expect to save costs on the program itself and also on transportation.
Transportation piece is a huge piece.
That's a big one.
Yes.
So for those watching this, could I summarize this by saying that we currently kind of third-party out or vendor out some of our special ed students to other programs? Some of them are private businesses, some of them are located far away depending upon certain needs. The district is required by law to transport them, no matter where we're sending them. It could be the Healdsburg. I think we have something as far as, is it Ukiah maybe?
We don't even be going to Ukiah, we
South
don't even
Marin?
Maybe I'm thinking.
We have South Marin, a few, but
Windsor.
we have
Windsor.
going to Windsor and nobody would be on Windsor at this point.
And I'm sure that this won't bring everybody back into the fold. I'm sure there's still going to be some very special needs.
There'll be some non-public school utilization that exceeds our capacity.
But this kind of brings it back into the fold and sort
Yeah.
of creates the program again.
Um,
Is that a fair way of saying that?
Yes, exactly.
Go ahead.
How many students do you think this will support?
We are bringing back for the high school district in 14-15, it's about 40 students. Yeah. And for the elementary in 15-16, we're talking about, I believe, around 100 students.
Of Petaluma City Schools
No,
or
no.
for the whole
South
South?
County.
The whole entire South County.
Okay, that's a lot of
Yeah.
students. That's a lot shorter bus rides.
I noticed that this doesn't specifically excludes, does not include non-public school services
Right.
in this agreement. So, and that's a big number. I mean, always a big number every year out of our budget. So I'm wondering if there's been any thought or plan of action to try to consolidate, go for those efficiencies, economy of scale with that. Have you guys given any consideration to an all-inclusive program or some way to avoid paying, which quite frankly is college-type tuitions
Yeah.
for one individual student?
That is a really interesting question. Actually, there is a district that actually built their own quote-unquote, non-public school facility and specially designed for those children's needs. And bringing back that program saved them a lot of money.
Yeah. It's very difficult for our school district to do because of our requirements for integration of students when they're on our campus and an inability to isolate them on a public school campus. That's why you go with the non-public school. for
Well,
services.
I get that, but with
that-
all these other districts, Steve, when you look at, if somebody was just to do analysis, I think I'd like to see someone do a report on that, just,
If you remember, the board had asked me to share that and explore that with the Selpa Superintendent's Council, and basically the answer I was just providing was the major issue. If a public school attempts to do that, be it the county office or a public school district, you can't have an isolated campus that's operated by a public school. It can be a non-public school. So that's, if these kids need to be on campuses off of regular school districts' sites, then that's a non-public school and not a public school.
so we couldn't have a campus model within our campus, like our
That
small
was-
learning communities?
As a
We can't
public
have it?
school district, we couldn't establish a school that isolates students from the student population, but we have the ability
Why
to
is
do
but
it
hear
that.
what I'm saying,
isolating
hear what
if
I'm
they
saying.
have a certain need, like speech therapy, you get pulled off of the.
Because they need to be integrated with the desire is to integrate them with other students.
But I get that, but what I'm saying is, what about if we were to entertain having a campus within a campus? Would that be considered exclusionary with these other people being able to, we could fill their needs from these other school districts? Because I gotta imagine it's really difficult for a small school district. I mean, some of these school districts, let's say like Wilson. I mean, if they
I've
had,
done them every year.
if they had 5 or 6 non-public school placements, I mean, that's huge for them.
Right, and that's the biggest issue for small school districts, is the fact that if they have a family, occasionally you have a family move in
Yeah.
who adopts students with needs. And then now you have in your attendance area and responsible for students who may cost you, $70,000, $80,000 per kid
Right.
to educate.
It
them.
seemed
So
like it
that's
would
a
also be
huge
hard for
impact.
families.
But we did,
Be
with
transporting
us
children far away from
bringing
home.
back the program we have at CASA this year, next year we're going to have another severely emotionally SED students. We'll have 2 classes at CASA and 1 at Kenilworth. And many of those students would potentially have been in non-public schools who we're bringing back onto our campuses. Again,
Well, as long as we're aware of it and we're looking at it, because,
we're
yeah,
addressing that issue
we
to
just
the
don't want
extent
to
that we
bleed
can.
money
Right.
if we could better serve in-house, right?
Sure.
Right.
And to Sherry's point, maybe
Well,
close.
and for,
Yeah,
and
a lot closer to
for
home.
families too, I mean, if you already have a child with any kind of special needs or disability or anything, that adds even more hardship to the situation for you. Like, that would be really hard for me to have to really travel the great distance or know they were outside of my, it's hard enough as our kids grow. They're 15 and they can take care of themselves and they go far away, let alone a child that you're worried about.
Right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Alrighty, let's move to item 15, resolution 1314-35, the Board of Education, Petaluma City Elementary and Joint Union High School Districts authorizing transfers between balances and expenditures at the close of the year for Ed Code 42601.
Second.
This is a standard resolution that we do every year that allows us to do the journal entries and the transfers that we need to close the books.
How you doing on the books?
Well, given the fact that we've just put the 14-15 budget to bed, we're just getting started.
Did the state of California tell you how much we are getting for 2013-14?
No, I still have no official, I have no
And
official
there's
document.
And this is June
From-
24.
Yes.
Yeah. We don't know what we're getting for.
Just do the
We'll know by
expenses.
the-
We'll figure out the revenue side.
We'll know by next week, no, by the end of this week, excuse me.
Well, as long as they didn't wait till the 30th, I mean, for goodness sake.
Well, thankfully, the 30th is a Monday, I believe,
Yeah,
so
it
you
is.
should be okay.
Thankfully.
You got that?
You don't have to work on Sunday.
Yeah. All right, all those in favor of transferring to close the books?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right. Well, we got a
Another
system for
annual
that
one.
too, yeah. Resolution 1314-36, the Board of Education, Petaluma City Elementary and Joint Union High School Districts of Sonoma County, State of California, requesting fund transfer under Article, what is that, 16, Section 6 of the state constitution.
Should we get it? A second.
Get a rhythm.
Try to keep
Come
it
on,
easy
get a
over
rhythm.
here.
So This resolution deals with the ability to borrow cash potentially, up to 85% of our budget, and we typically don't do that, but this is the authorization to do that.
You'll call first.
Yes, yes, we would let you know.
That'd be important. Okay. Questions?
Yeah, if we borrow cash, I mean, we only have one place we can go borrow from, right?
At this time, yes, because we don't have a TRAN, a tax revenue anticipation note with an outside entity. We are borrowing from the county treasurer, which their cost of interest is less than 0.6%, 0.5%, so it's a good deal.
Other questions?
Maybe we should borrow, go long on the market and.
All those in favor of Mitch hedging?
Hedging, yes. Mitch is a hedger.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hey, for the grand finale.
Yeah.
Item 17, 2014-2015 budget adoption authorization. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Based on the presentation, do you have any other questions?
Something clearly would have changed between the time that you just presented that and now, so. Have you got an email or anything?
This just
Oh,
in.
not-
This just in.
Nothing? So we're gonna play it that way then, as you presented it 35 minutes ago? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank
It's a
you.
big dollar.
Yep.
Okay, let's see, do I have any discussion items here?
Yes, but
Where?
18, just the ADA.
Oh,
Any
yeah,
questions on
yeah,
it?
let's talk about, it's kind of important. Enrollment, ADA, do we have anything that you want to add to? No, numbers are looking good. Summertime, hopefully nobody's showing up to school.
Well, we have summer school that's about ready to start.
Yes.
That's good.
So
Is that
that's
something new?
for our.
What? Summer school?
Yeah.
Yes, we, as part of our LCAP, that's one of our things that we've brought back, which is really exciting.
Okay, now that's all, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna ask about the numbers.
Numbers, we have over 600 kids attending secondary summer school starting next Monday.
Wow.
Yes, and we have around 280 right today attending elementary summer schools starting July 7th. So I'm anticipating a few more in elementary.
Now, if I remember correctly, and tell me if I'm wrong, this is all makeup, this is
Yes.
remedial. This
The
is-
secondary is credit recovery.
Thank
a
you.
credit recovery.
I love it like that, credit
Credit
recovery.
recovery.
Gotta recover some credit.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion on that? We don't need-
Steve, I have a real quick question.
Sure.
It kind of is, does Santa Rosa JC, or our students during their high school years attendance at Santa Rosa JC, does that hinder us financially at all?
No, concurrent enrollment, as long as they take their required number of courses at the high school, we get to count enrollment for those students.
Okay.
So if they're taking English over at the high school?
At
Or
the
at
JC,
the JC,
English is a very popular class.
or a history
You can
class,
take-
something like that.
Your senior English in a semester at the JC
Don't say
goes
that on
to a
TV.
year at the high school.
But just, there's no financial impact to us? Okay.
Okay. I do have a report out of, well, you want to talk about future business real quick? Do you have anything we need to talk about?
Nope, July 15th meeting will be, we'll be bringing back the certification of the election. And we'll be bringing back a first reading of a bylaw to address creating the fiscal oversight committee for the Prop 39 funds
Oh, very
that
good.
the voters approved.
Okay. All right, then I do have a report out on closed session, but I don't seem to have my
It was
Right.
just,
resolution.
Le papier, le papier.
did we-
No, we had.
Oh, yeah, we did, you're right.
Mhm.
You pass this,
Yeah, so let me read that. Thank you.
You don't have to read it verbatim, or you just
I'm
have
going to read the whole thing.
to get to the Latin?
It's a resolution of the Board of Education of the Petaluma City Elementary School District and Petaluma Joint Union High School District, in the matter of decision to release or non-reelect temporary hourly adult education certificated employees effective June 30th, and by a vote of 4-0 in closed session, this resolution was adopted. That's the report out of closed session. I understand you have a book of stuff I have to sign over, Donna, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
we have a few things for everyone to sign as well.
Me too, Donna.
Thank you all very much.
As a clerk or not?
Yes, I did.